academia, government of Alberta, and industry joining us to share their insight on the importance of this initiative and the progress to date in their spheres of influence. So what I am going to ask the panelists, because this is probably better for you guys to get a sense of who they are, is that I'm going to ask you that in 1 minute or less, or maybe a minute. You introduce yourselves. So give us your name. Please be very clear when you're pronouncing your name, your pronouns, your current title and place of work, and weave into your introduction your involvement in pushing for 30 by 30. Why is this topic relevant today? Why should we care about this? And we are going to start with Edmonton. So what about Kathy?
Sure, I can start. Super excited to be here today. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Kathy Maniego. My pronouns are she, her. I am the Assistant Deputy Minister of Strategic Integration and Operations at Alberta Infrastructure with the Government of Alberta. Basically what that means is my portfolio has technical standards for vertical infrastructure. So we set the standards for buildings, not building code, but the technical standards that we operate under for building government infrastructure. So museums, hospitals, schools, that all falls under my portfolio. I also have a policy portfolio. So we set the policy behind those items as well for vertical infrastructure. In terms of why this is really important, as the folks that set the standards, we need women at the table. We still do recruitments where we don't see a lot of women applying for our engineering positions, and we really need to get women at the table. We need some innovation and services in our government buildings and spaces that reflect women as well. So that's why 30 by 30 is so important to us.
Andre?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm also very happy to be here as well. So my name is Andre McDonald, and my pronouns would be he, him. The Associate Vice President for Strategic Research Initiatives and Performance at the University of Alberta, and I'm also a professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. In terms of my role there, I focus essentially on driving major strategic initiatives through the University of Alberta that pertain to research and engage a lot with researchers, with students on a day-to-day basis. In terms of research, I focus on training about 10 to 12 graduate students and undergraduate students, as well as high school students, in my research on developing thermally sprayed coatings for protecting machine parts in a variety of different industries. In terms of why is 30 by 30 important and what I'm doing in terms of engaging on that. So I have a program that I started in collaboration with community partners and other academics as well around experiential learning in innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship program for Black youth, where we're really happy to say that we are at gender parity in the program. And the goal is to start training young people for engineering and science even before they've even started to think about it, building that pipeline early and creating, the engineers of tomorrow. And that's, the role that I'm playing. And I believe that that's very important that we start doing that to give the, people to apply for the jobs that are available, right? So thank you very much.
Thank you, Andre. Now here in Calgary, we have Carmen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carmen Lee Essington, and I'm the Vice President of Oil Sands Operations for Cenovus Energy. Really what we're responsible for is getting the bitumen or the oil from the ground and getting it to market so that it can be sold and refined as products that we use every day. The 30 by 30 initiative for us, and I'll speak on behalf of Cenovus here, it very much aligns with our target of having 30% of women in leadership roles by 2030. And I'll say, and we'll get into the questions and I can share a little bit more about my own insights and stories, but it's important because it's really important to have a diverse mixture of talent and voices in the room. to make good business decisions at the end of the day. And that's what I'll say there. And my pronouns are she, her.
Thank you, Carmen. And finally, Jennifer.
And I'd love to build on what Carmen has shared. Also being from industry, my name is Jennifer Krochak. My pronouns are she, her. I'm Vice President of Special Projects with WSP Canada. So it's a large multinational engineering consulting firm. And my involvement in 30 by 30 and why I'm passionate about it as a member of the leadership team, I have the benefit of working with a female CEO, which is quite rare in our industry. And so it's quite an inspiration to me. And it's definitely part of our ongoing conversations at the leadership table. So pleased to be here and to engage with all of you and really look forward to the discussion today.
Thank you very much, everyone. So we'll get started. I have a set of prepared questions in here, and we have allocated time as well for questions from the audience, both in Edmonton, Calgary, and online. So I will be mindful of the time. This first question, I'm going to target Carmen and Jennifer from industry. And it's, what has been your experience navigating the engineering and geoscience profession? Did you see yourself represented when you started? Did you have role models to look up to? Carmen?
As I want to share a story with you. So I've worked not only in oil and gas, but I've worked in the mining industry and academia as well. And I just want to share a bit of story of when I first started in industry. And it was a long time ago, let's just say that. Maybe I won't give the number of years. I was going to give the years, but I'm not going to give the years. So I started in the mining exploration industry. So what that means for those of you who may not know, it's I lived and worked in the Yukon. We did work in Alaska and the Nunavut. We lived in mining camps. Out of 8 months out of the year, I was in a camp. And a camp is not what we have today, which is more like a hotel. It was a wall tent, so a cloth tent. It was 8 feet by 12 feet, was heated with a wood burning stove. There was no running water or electricity. We slept on cots and we shared, there's 6 of us to one of these tents. And we carried rifles under our beds because there were bears nearby. So that painting the picture. So was I represented during that time as an engineer or geoscientist? I'm going to say no. Not only were there no other engineers or geoscientists, I'm a geologist, by the way, by training. There were no other women in this industry. And quite honestly, every time I'd go to a new camp, I would be directed to the kitchen because they thought I was the new camp cook or something like that. So I'm going to say it was tough. It was tough because it seemed as though no matter what you did, you were criticized for the decisions that you made or the outcomes that you had. And but what I will say is that I had a boss who supported me and was a mentor to me. And partway through a season, he just said to me, like, look, Carmen, you've got 3 things working against you. You're young, you're inexperienced, and you're a woman. Get over it. And I was like, okay. And so we moved on. I would say, so in all honesty, like I would say, I have had role models. I do have role models. They are all male. And I would say that, and we'll get into a little bit later on, but I would say that even today, do I see myself represented in this industry? I think there are a few of us, particularly in operations. So even to this day, it's still a challenge to have folks like us in these roles. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And Jennifer?
I think really well said. You know, in terms of role models, like I mentioned earlier, our CEO is female. We're quite lucky with representation for our executive. We're 5 of our 14 senior executive are female, including our chief people and chief legal officers. Like Carmen mentioned, most of my role models and mentors have been men. You know, senior leaders who believe in the value of diverse perspectives. And I encountered sort of a strange mixture of discrimination and abusive behavior from places where I didn't expect it. You know, very highly educated male engineers with multiple degrees who one threw a notepad at me and told me to take notes in a meeting, that kind of thing. And then support from unexpected quarters, like senior construction people, you know, the typical stereotypical large, white, loud man, table banging, but saw me as his daughter, you know, went out of his way to protect me and make sure that I had a good experience on site. So I guess what I'd say is, I think it's a very individual thing. You can never really predict who will be an ally and who will not be, and maybe not give you the respect you deserve. So just be open, be open to have conversations with people that maybe you wouldn't expect to be supportive, and you might be surprised. So.
Yes, and thank you for saying they were allies, the Soyuz daughters. One of our summits was about male allyship, and some of our volunteers said, now I know that I cannot call myself an ally. I have to earn that right. Somebody else has to identify me as an ally. So, thank you. The four of you, because I did my research, but I did not know about the huts over there in the Yukon. I can tell you that was hidden somewhere. The four of you have a strong foundation in technical and leadership roles. Who supported you in your journey, and how have you used this foundation to succeed and improve your workplace? And I'm going to ask that question to both Kathy and Carmen. So Kathy, if we start with you.
Sure. This is probably something I could talk about forever. Similar to my colleagues, I didn't have a whole lot of representation. I didn't have mentors that were women. I work in government. I've been there 23 years, and my current position is the first time I've had a female supervisor. She's an accountant, not an engineer, but close enough. It'll do for now. I'm very excited for the first time to be working for a woman. There was a point in my career where they said you should have a strong female mentor, and I went, great, where am I going to find that? But I did find one, and so we had some great conversations. At first I was weirded out by that because I thought, well, a mentor is a mentor. I'm happy for advice from anywhere, but there's something about having someone supporting you that you can talk to about what it's like to come back to work after maternity leave and having a nursing child still. That's not something that the men think about in the office, and it's not something we have the facilities for. And so who do you talk to? So having a strong female mentor ended up actually being a really great thing. So how we've now translated that is we now, when we hire new young engineers and our interns, we try our best to pair them up with women engineers that they can relate to. We make a very conscious effort of recruiting people that can be mentors as well, so that, because that representation is just so important, and having someone you can turn to for some of those discussions is critical. Yes, so that would be my 2 cents, I guess.
Thank you. And Carmen, how about you?
So for myself, I started really in oil and gas during a time there wasn't any D&I targets, and I had a number of supporters and mentors throughout my career. And I think they supported me and sponsored me because I had the capacity and ability to progress in an organization, not because I was female or in geosciences or anything like that. And I would say that was probably the number one thing that helped me succeed in my career today. And so how we're carrying it forward is in my organization, and I recognize we're talking about engineers here, but I work out in operations. So what that means is that I have about 1,000 folks, and they are all in power engineering and trades. And of that 1,000 people, there are less than 5% represented by women. And of that 5%, there's 0 in leadership roles, at least when I took over a number of years ago. And so knowing the importance of sponsorship and mentoring, myself and my leadership team, we intentionally actively look for our high potential female contributors. And we've had to tap people on the shoulder to say, you know what, I think you'll be good for this role. I think you have the ability to be in this leadership position or things like that, and sort of help them and guide them through that process. And it's amazing how much, we see the level of competency, yet when we talk to them, they say, I'm not qualified, I don't have a number of years experiences. And as a result of that, I'm really proud to say that we have, as of last year, we have 2 women in frontline leadership roles, which is the first in the history of our company. So I think that's where it starts, and that's what we're doing in our organization.
Thank you. Yeah, not too many companies can say that. So yeah that's great. Oh, yes. About Alberta's environmental, social, and governance goals. Kathy, what does the 30 by 30 initiative, what role does the 30 by 30 initiative play in achieving the Alberta's environmental, social, and governance goals?
That's a great question. We actually have an environmental social governance secretariat that was set up 2 years ago for the government of Alberta. It's first of its kind amongst the provinces, and it's really to serve as a strategic coordinating body for all of our ESG related activities across government. They pull together frameworks and policies and programs to really show the world that Alberta is a leader for clean, secure, and ethically sourced energy. That is really the focus. It's to really advertise Alberta. And so the 30 by 30 goal is a really key piece of the social pillar for that framework. And I happen to know that the wonderful lady that runs the ESG Secretariat is also an engineer. So we're well represented there, which is great. And so as a whole, diversity inclusion is really important for that. It's really so that we can advertise Alberta as a leader in maintaining diverse and inclusive workplace as part of that clean, secure, ethically sourced energy. The achievement of the 30 by 30 goal will really, I think it's really going to gain and maintain that confidence for investors and job seekers is really as a great place to work as a leader in the field, and include those. It'll help us include those ESG considerations as a whole in our decision making.
Thank you very much. And so the next question is in academia. Andrew, for yourself. You mentioned having mentoring or working with 10 to 12 students at the time. In those research groups, what motivates candidates to innovate, and specifically female candidates?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the question. And I smile because when I think about generally what motivates the students that I've had interactions with, even the ones in high school, they're interested in creating something. They're interested in learning. That's a very big one as well. And they're interested in translating what they learned into something that is of value, right? And I think, broadly across the board, whether or not the students are male or female, they always tend to reiterate that. Maybe, in different areas in terms of where they'd like to apply their knowledge, but they're all very keen about learning, creating, and really translating what they've developed out into the broader society. From my experience and engagement with, the female students that I've worked with in our group, I find that when they write their applications just to start to engage in research, they tend to focus it a bit just by the tone and some of the language that they use around community, around wanting to solve technological and global challenges. They actually articulate that in their statements of purpose, which is, in my opinion, very interesting. And that actually motivates me as the supervisor to want to engage with them, right? I also see, especially when it comes to female candidates, that once they are in the group, the questions that they ask tend to be around how do I translate what we have developed to support growth outside of the research in the group. That is something that also resonates with, with clients, with, the broader scientific community as well. When people ask questions, what is the purpose of your research? So I tend to find that, a lot. And when you really then think about it, they're asking questions that go beyond just technological innovation or commercialization, but are now starting to engage around social innovation, which is excellent because we're now looking to work with communities to really broaden the idea of innovation. So that's something that I've noticed in particular with, female candidates that work in the group. And I'll admit to you, it's really hard to talk about social innovation when you talk about tungsten carbide deposited on a pump impeller blade, right? So to, have, those kinds of questions come up in conversations with candidates, it's very enlightening and it's very motivational for me personally, again, as a supervisor and broadly for my colleagues as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Bringing the solutions to society.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. According to statistics, only 47% of the female engineering graduates would complete the registration as PH. And the study also reveals that women leave the engineering profession within the first 10 years at a rate that is twice as high as male engineers in some provinces. This means that supporting female engineers in their first, 5 to 10 years, encouraging them and supporting them to achieve their PH is imperative. To that effect, Jennifer, one of the top barriers for women in the profession is career development and advancing. What is your company doing to maintain their gender equity focus and continue to support hiring, promote, and retain women in the profession?
Absolutely. And it's a great question. And again, something I'm very passionate about. The industry has long recognized the value of diverse opinions at the leadership table. So in terms of making the argument why this is important and the value that it adds to the business, I mean, it's there. The studies and the data all support it. In addition to that, senior female representation I mentioned, which is wonderful. We also have programs that are specifically designed to ensure this is not only visible, but acted upon. We have regular reporting on inclusion and diversity as part of our ESG goals. That's part of our accountability, not just to our internal team, but to our shareholders, because we are a publicly traded company. And as this gains visibility, it's very important that we hold ourselves accountable to the targets that we set. We have a variety of employee resource groups, which I'll touch on in a later conversation. And as Carmen mentioned, we also deliberately tap high potential women on the shoulder for stretch assignments, to look at them for succession candidates. We deliberately structure our job postings in a way that's very gender neutral in language, and not just for females, but for other underrepresented groups who face similar challenges. And that's going to be one of my messages and requests of the group today. We are taking great steps as females, people who identify as females in the profession, but there are a lot of other underrepresented groups who have similar challenges. And so if we can link arms, we're much sort of stronger as a group. We have flexible working programs. So the statistics you mentioned about women sort of not sticking it through and getting to their designation, the burden of early family, childcare. So we do have a flexible working program that lets people sort of design their work week and work a couple days from home, have adjustable start and end times if they need to do daycare run or whatever, that we can make that accessible and accommodate these really high potential and excellent professionals who just need that support and environment from the business. And we have a very robust parental leave program as well. And again, we moved away from calling it maternity or paternity leave because this is more inclusive of our non-binary colleagues who might have a same-sex partner or that sort of relationship. So it's very important that we recognize that we want to create an environment that fits a wide variety of people and makes it very empowering and engaging for our female professionals to live up to their full potential. So, yeah.
Thank you. Carmen, may I ask you the same question? The company, what is your company doing to maintain gender equity focus and continue to support, hire, promote, and retain women?
So many of the same things that Jennifer has mentioned. And like I said, we do have a target. We have ESG targets to have, I say, 30% of our women in leadership roles by 2030. That is in our annual report. And as Jennifer said, is the expectation of the investment community and our board of directors. We also have a number of employee supported groups. We support STEM, Skills Canada, Canada-wide Science Fair. We have social investment in groups, including Women in Science, Engineering, WinSet, Network of Empowered Women, Calgary Influential Women in Business. But what I want to say is that that's my corporate speaking notes from communication. The reality is that we can have all these programs, but it may not necessarily move the needle. It creates awareness, it creates platforms. But the truth of it is that we have qualified individuals such as yourselves here that we want in the workforce. And it is really, I believe, because I'm in a leadership role, it starts with leadership. We have to believe and buy into the fact that it is important to have a diverse workforce, whatever that looks like. And I'm going to be honest, in can I say our industry? Our industry. It may not be fully bought in everywhere. And so that's why you see women underrepresented. So I think it starts from here. It starts from us making and being intentional about that awareness and actually doing something about it. And I think that's where it can grow from there.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your honesty. Yes. Kathy, this question is for you. Do you have an EDI program, a network resource group at work to promote women professionals, and what activities do you do?
So government has a number of EDI programs across the different ministries. I'll focus more on the engineering ministries, like infrastructure and transportation. What we do is we have we're focusing on women and underrepresented groups, but we do activities like and I'm going to give a shout out to the I Am Remarkable people. We actually brought people into a room and worked on and practiced self-promotion. Really, the idea is to focus on career growth and set folks up for success for interviewing and just even having the confidence to apply for those management positions and those leadership roles. So we actually brought people into a room and made them talk to each other and always start the sentence with, "I am remarkable because." And it was so uncomfortable. It was so painful. It was really hard. We're conditioned very much to be humble. And so to see women step up and start, well, I'm remarkable because I managed to get all 3 kids out the door this morning. You know what? That is remarkable. Good for you. Right. And it was so empowering. And it was just wonderful to see everybody step up, because it did then progress to, well, I'm remarkable because I actually invented this thing that made our processes way better. Wow, that's awesome. And we didn't know that. And how come we're not talking about that and celebrating it? So those are the kind of activities we do. They're a little bit more informal, but they have been really good for having us encourage each other, which has been a huge success for us.
That ties so beautifully with the talk that we just heard from Claudia, how to humble brag in your PHPGO, your resume, your life, and everything. If you are remarkable, let the light shine on you.
Exactly.
Otherwise people won't know that. Jennifer, the same question for you. About your EDI program, network resource groups, you alluded to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just to build on that comment, I mean, yes, and it's something we see so often is, as a female professional, I need to check every box on that job posting before I'm even comfortable putting my name in the ring. And a male colleague might check, 20, 30%. Sure, I'm good. I'll figure it out when I get there. Well, I mean, we are just as competent and capable and detail oriented and all those things. So to both reduce the barriers from an employer perspective, but also to spread the good word, just get out there, like believe in yourself and reach for things you want and take the chances. So sorry, a little segue, but I just love that point. I had to chime in. So we are very dedicated to this and have an inclusion and diversity leader who does this full time. So her entire mandate is to engage with the business, keep us accountable against we call it our promise, which is our slate of mandated or set targets that we've given ourselves to reach and achieve. We also have a global inclusion and diversity policy and a global inclusion and diversity champion, who is our CEO and president, Marie-Claude Dumas, she herself is an engineer. So we're very well represented at the executive table. In addition to our Women of WSP, which is an employee resource group specific for our female professionals, we also have quite wide representation and Indigenous ERG called Circle, a network for our Black professionals, our Vibe ERG and I want to make sure I get all these right, 2SL GBTQIA plus employees. I mean, it's the full rainbow of wonderful people that we work with. And we have a developing professionals network. So this is specifically targeted at our up and coming leaders under the age of 30. It's not specific to women, but it is a great place for our young female professionals to network and to engage with members of the leadership team who are executive sponsors and participate in mentoring and networking sessions. And just to continue to repeat that mantra, it's not just female focus for us. I mean, it's definitely a part of the conversation, but that broader picture of underrepresented groups, and just to make sure that everyone finds their place and can reach their full potential. So,
yeah. Thank you very much. I'm watching the clock. I have one question for you, Andre, and then I will decide if we open up the floor for questions from the audience. What practices in academia have you seen that invite young women into engineering programs? And which ones have you seen that lead to long-term retention?
Great, great question. Thank you for that. So, I guess, because I'm coming from academia, we work a lot with young people. I would say that the programs and some of the activities that we've done, and I'll use the University of Alberta just as an example, since it's familiar to a lot of us, having programs like Wisest, for example, that support, really young girls to engage from high school in engineering, but coming into the engineering buildings and actually doing work there, it's great. Programs like Discover East, we're going all the way to, maybe middle school, right? Also really good. The program, elite program for Black youth that gives experiential work integrated training to young people that gets them embedded with sponsors as well as with mentors in engineering, in science, is really, what is helping to motivate them and to keep them, in the field after they actually complete high school, because then you're looking at post-secondary transition programs. The other thing is, and again, coming, as someone who is from the Black community, when you see yourself, you're motivated to be a part of whatever that community is. So if we have more women professors, women leaders in academia, that's going to keep retention. That's going to keep motivation. The other thing that I'd like to pivot to Kathy's point, because I really love that, is the successes and the accomplishments of women professionals need to be celebrated by those who are not from that demographic group, right? And I think that's something in academia that happens very often. Now we've increased the number of, women professors, but we have also increased celebration of the accomplishment of those individuals as well. And that really helps, because then it's almost like an outsider is saying, wow, this is great. And I'm going to put this on LinkedIn and I'm going to blast this out, right? And when young girls see that, when young people who, are female, they see that, then they say, hey, I want to be like that. And it's being celebrated by a broad community of individuals, right? So I think those are some of the things that happen in academia that help to support retention, but also help to support early engagement as well.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask one more question before we go into the audience. Kathy, what would you say to those who think it is unfair? Sorry, no, it's not Kathy. I have my things in here with all that. It is actually to Andre. It's back to you, Andre. What would you say to those who think it is unfair to hire women just to fill diversity quotas?
Right. Okay. So I will give some comments on this. And I would say, you know what? Maybe it is unfair, right? To hire, someone who may not be qualified for the job, irrespective of, their, how they identify, right? So, what I would say, then is we should issue a call to action to those individuals who do say it's unfair to hire individuals who are not qualified, and help us, give us support for establishing these pipeline programs that help to build that capacity. So that way we will have a cohort of individuals who are qualified we can hire for jobs, and to really build, innovative systems and to create jobs for everyone. So that would be the call that I would give, because what I notice from my personal experiences, I hear people say it's unfair, but then they run away and they don't do anything, right? Well, come and help us to build the pipeline of qualified individuals, so that way you don't have to complain that it is unfair. And let us work together collaboratively to build that out, right? So that would be my response to them. I agree, but come and help us so we can work together to resolve what you view as being unfair.
Thank you so much. So at this time, we're going to open the floor for questions. So they could come from Edmonton, they could come from Calgary, they could come from the chat. So Anindit and Rume, two of our volunteers are monitoring the chat. And in here, we have our room monitors that will be looking for people. And Claudia has a question. Yes, where Mark is Mike doing things. Do you have the question? Come here, come here, come here. Come here, yeah.
That's great.
Please prepare your questions. That's okay.
So the question I had was on quotas. My name is Claudia. I'm one of the volunteers for the Women in Engineering Summit. I am a professional project manager. We run projects with schedule targets, budget targets, quality targets. Why don't we do the same with the initiative of more diversity in engineering and geoscience? Targets are there because humans don't do anything until they have to. So if Suncor, anybody work for Suncor here? Oh, yeah, Marta, of course. Can you imagine, Marta, if the CEO of Suncor said, no more targets. We're just going to do the best we can.
Oh, yeah, that's not gonna fly.
You're going to lose the place in the world. So the question I would say, it would go to whoever you want, Marta. Right. Why, not why, how can we make quotas normal in EDI, equity, diversity, and inclusion?
Sure, Carmen has raised her hand.
So 100% agree. So what I wanted to say is that, you know, when I first started with my career with the Geological Survey, which is just down the road here, the first thing I was told was, you're being hired because we have to fill a quota. We need 2 women to go in the field. And admittedly, pretty angry when I heard that, because you thought you were being hired because you were qualified. The thing that I'll say today is about quotas, and I agree. I mean, we do have targets. We do have quotas. And I know a lot of people in our organization are pretty upset with that. I'll say this, the way I look at it is that you're going to be hired, whoever is going to be hired, because you are the most qualified, full stop, number one, right? Number two, for all of us that are maybe part of this quota, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to demonstrate what you can do. And finally, what I want to agree with you is that if we don't have a goal or a metric or a target to know that we're increasing the diversity of our workforce, then how do we know that we're progressing it if we don't measure it? So I agree. I would agree.
And maybe just to build on that about what gets measured gets done. Our executive have gone the step further, and it's part of our bonusing, where there's actually a metric tied to executive compensation about how well we do against these targets that we've set for ourselves and committed to market. So it's not just something we've said and don't have any like incentive to follow through. That's not the right reason to do it, but it is one of those things that make sure that it's focused on and it gets the right attention. So.
Kathy and Andre, do you have something to add?
Sure, I can. So as government, we do not have quotas for hiring. But what we do have, we do want to see, and it's probably not the same targets that my colleagues have. We do want to see that. So we're focusing on the pipelines. We're focusing on getting more kids interested so that we can see those numbers. We want 30 by 30. So that, I guess that's our target, but we have not been able to translate those into hiring quotas.
Need I think more engineers in that department? Yes, Andre, please.
And if I may, so now I'm gonna take off the engineering hat, I'm gonna put it over there, and I'm gonna put on the law hat. So, you know, filling quotas, that's where I would say I have a problem. But having quotas, I think is great because it gives us something to aspire to. It gives us something to move towards. You know, we're engineers in the room after all, right? That's what we do, right? So, you know, to my earlier point, I would say absolutely put the quotas in there, but then if we can find the opportunities to fill the quota with qualified people, what are the strategies that we're going to develop and employ to help us to get there, right? That's the, you know, again, the call to action that I would put out there, rather than saying, oh, we have this 30%, can't find anybody, so we're just going to grab anybody and put them in there, because then it's going to create a social problem, and that's where the issue is gonna happen. And I think to Carmen's point earlier, you know, then, you know, those who are actually in the role, who are really good and really awesome and very qualified, are gonna, you know, start to get, you know, pushback, right? You know, in really negative ways, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
Questions here.
Can you guys
We have a question from Calgary here.
hear me?
Okay. And then next we pass here in Edmonton. Thank you.
Okay, you guys can hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
we can hear you.
So this is Prabhu. So one question that I had, Andre, you specifically mentioned that a lot of the women that you work with, they're really passionate about what they do, and that comes across in their writing. Jennifer, you mentioned that you guys identify highly motivated women. It seems like a lot of the women that you're working with, they already have these types of mindsets where they're primed for success, they're predisposed to find success wherever they go. How do we kind of help those women who, unfortunately might have been raised in families or societies where they were punished for going against the status quo, for speaking up for themselves, and who like the types of women who fly under the radar and don't have enough self-belief or mental strength to go to the Yukon for 8 months and occasionally confront a polar bear?
I would love to try to take that one, and I would even extend it to those who are introverted among us.
Yeah.
So how do you create space in general in your meetings and your teams for those who aren't self-promoting? How do you structure meetings that you maybe advise people in advance of the topics, that they can think about it, they can pre-read, they can come and provide their thoughtful input? I had a leader, I'm actually an introvert, who knew that I didn't want to speak up in meetings. And so we had a code where if I really wanted to say something but didn't want to interrupt the flow of conversation, I would push my pen forward on the table. And this was our prearranged signal. He would know I had something really important to say, but I wasn't going to interrupt my colleagues' conversation. So it gave me that safe space to contribute, but without feeling like I was forcing myself on people. So I think it's just having those individual conversations, understanding individual comfort, and having that team leadership will to make safe space for those conversations. So anyway, that's it. I'll take my pen back now.
Great. I think we had
Can we
somebody.
pass the question, please?
Sorry, we're gonna take another one from Calgary because we're already there. And then we'll
Okay.
take an Edmonton one. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you.
I guess it's not, even know if this works. I don't know if this is more of a question, but kind of a comment and my own realization. So I've gone through operations, industry, going into consulting, project engineer manager, and now kind of moved up into an executive position. And what I realized a couple of years ago, I was like, this is such a fertile ground for women right now. You have like no idea. You literally can go up to your executive and you can say, I want that position. How do I get there? So you need to be your own advocate for yourself as well. And it's up to them to figure out how they're going to get you there. They're going to set you up with whatever you want so that you reach that goal. And if you don't see that, then it's either a further conversation with somebody else, or you're looking at opportunities with companies such as the ones that are being represented. But like, this is the time for you to shine, really.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Tulema.
Okay. Would you like to come here? Please. Okay.
So as an undergraduate student, engineering student at the University of Alberta, I'm actually curious to know what message or piece of advice do you have for aspiring prospective female engineers that you would want for them to hear?
Ooh, just one. So I guess my message for an undergraduate engineer would be find yourself a role model. Find champions that will help you in your career.
Thank you, Kathy.
So far away.
Okay, yes.
How do you recognize if it's your company's or your team's culture that's not letting you move up in your career as a woman versus you need to do a little bit more work and they're not being sexist against you?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm just going to try to repeat it just so that we can hear in Calgary. So the question was,
no, we didn't. Can you repeat it?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yeah. So the question was, how do you recognize if the culture in your team or your company is what's holding you back, or if it's something that you personally need to work at? Like, how do you recognize if it's sexist or not? Which is a great question and can be difficult. I'm not sure I have an answer right off the top of my head, so if my colleagues want to go first. I think you have to look for the patterns. Is it a pattern you're seeing? Is is it just you or is it happening to others? So that's where that network is really, really important. If you're in a team, of course, where you're the only woman, then that gets a little bit harder to determine. But you do need to look for those patterns and ask for that feedback. So what am I missing? What did I do wrong in that interview? Why am I not progressing? And just have those blunt conversations.
And if I may, really quickly just add, and I'll speak from personal experience, being the demographic group that I'm from. If people outside of the company are telling you that you're awesome and the work that you do is good, you go to a conference, you go to a workshop, and people are coming up and saying, that's really good. This is, excellent. I like the model you did. I like the work that you did integrating code or whatever. Then you can probably, maybe think it's a team thing and it's not you per se. If you go out and people are giving you advice about, yeah, this is how you might want to improve on your work or whatever, and you're starting to know that, then maybe it's something for you to, reflect on and look at, right? And I can speak, to that from personal experiences, because, I've seen that, right? So that would be, one gauge that I would recommend using as well. And it has served me personally very well to be able to determine if it's me or if it's something else.
I think we have a question from the from online participants. Amanda Boyko.
Yep. Would you like me to read it out?
Sorry.
Would you like me to read the question out?
Yeah, sure. Because you've already there. Yeah.
Yep. So this question is from Amanda Boyko. They say, you spoke about companies offering flexible work programs, for example, work from home, flexible work hours, to encourage retention of employees and improve work-life balance. How does your company link these flexible work programs to compensate to compensation discussions? For employees who utilize these flexible work arrangements, what strategies do you recommend for them to protect their career capital? For example, access to growth or stretch assignments and consideration for promotions.
So I think I was the one who raised that, so I'm happy to take that question. So this is a company-wide flexible policy. Anyone who works for WSP has access to the same program. So it's not that it's targeted at a specific group. And it really relies on the leaders to take ownership of their team development and ensure that we have that connection. There's something part of our program called Anchor Days, where the team discuss and agree on certain days or times that the group will be mutually available to meet in person. And of course, if we have major project work or client meetings, that sort of thing, we need to be there and be there and be present. So in terms of ties to compensation, we're trying very hard in our industry to shift away from sort of an hours check the box model to productivity and output, high quality deliverables. Engineering is an industry, we need to move with technology, different conversation for a different time, but how do we fully leverage our workforce, understanding that there is a scarcity of qualified professionals, giving those people flexibility and focusing on output, on quality, on client satisfaction without it being, I'm measuring that an individual is in their chair for 7.5 hours a day and therefore they qualify for whatever perk or retention or promotion. So I hope I've addressed the question.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Okay, perfect.
We have two questions here in Calgary.
Yeah, there's another question here in the chat.
Okay, I'll let you go.
All right. So Monica Ho asks, how would you deal with friends or colleagues who think that we only found jobs because we are female engineers?
They are not your friends.
Well done. Well done. Well summarized. Straight to the heart of the matter. Yeah.
We have someone here that would like to add on.
Yes, so that's an easy question. So how do you deal with the engineer that says, I will not work for you because you are a woman, and actually goes and files a complaint? And you're a contractor and their staff. And it was his culture. So like there are things that we see, like that's an easy question. Like really easy question compared to what we face day in and day out. So it's, and yeah, so I guess it's, and the question was again, the question was,
The previous question was, what would you say to friends or, family or what have you, who would say like that you just got hired or what have you because you're that you have a job because you're an engineer or female or what have you, something like that.
yeah,
So,
so
not to
it
be
goes back
proud.
to what Claudia was saying, right? You have to brag about yourself and your qualifications and why you did get the role. I mean, there's a lot of people that there were quotas, but that's an easy question to answer because you are qualified. Yeah, yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you so much.
And if I
We'll
may,
give a chance
Amber,
to Calgary. Yep. Go ahead. Sorry, we'll give a chance to Edmonton. Sorry.
We have Andre to say something.
and just really quickly to that former question, sometimes it's good to ignore certain things and spend energy on other things. So it's just about how do you prioritize, to be quite candid. So with those individuals, I wouldn't even give bat an eye at them, to be quite honest with you, and focus my energy on my qualifications, doing the work, and getting down to to business, because even when you try to tell them, they're probably still not going to believe you anyway.
Thank you, Andre. We have 2 questions here in Calgary.
We have
Hi.
one question here after, or
Okay, I have a question here in Calgary. This one's for Kathy, though the other groups may have an answer as well. I'm just curious, within the government structure right now, how does GBA Plus or Gender-Based Analysis Plus being applied to creation of policy at the government level, to make sure that we capture some of these topics when policy is designed in the province?
So all of our policies, as we develop new policies or new legislation, when it goes through the process and it's presented to ministers and cabinet, they're all supposed to have their GBA plus analysis done. And it's literally a checkbox, which is unfortunate, but it is the first step in making sure that it's always done. We are still progressing on that front. Some departments are better at GBA plus analysis than others. And part of that, again, is having the right people in the room to make sure that that analysis is done properly. We also take GBA plus analysis should be done to every engagement process that we do. So when we go out and engage on new policy, even the engagement itself needs to have that GBA plus analysis done to make sure that we actually are able to get feedback from the right groups to make sure that we can then do the GBA plus analysis. So it is actually a very complex part of the process for policy, but it is incredibly important and it is required for any policy to go forward.
one more question here in Edmonton. Yes.
Yeah, so we have one more question here as well.
Is that what she said? No more questions in Edmonton?
Yes, one more question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kenya Romanovska, and I was wondering, what do you think the role of industry is in supporting men to go on parental leave? We know that women spend about 40% of their careers out of the workforce, and for men it's much less. Women can step up at work if men don't step up in the home. So is there a role for industry to encourage non-mothers to take caregiving responsibilities more equally?
Yeah, this is Carmen. I can start, and then I think Jennifer is going to add to it. I would say with our company, and I think it's maybe industry standard, I'm not sure, but we do offer parental leave. So we don't distinguish whether it's maternity leave, it's parental leave, and we do encourage our folks to take the time off that they need to raise their families. And I would say that personally, in my experience, it's not been a push. We see people taking that opportunity equally between men and women. to take time off when they have a new child or for any other reason, family reason.
No, absolutely. And just building on that, our same idea, we did have the evolution of the language and word choices are very important. So it used to be maternity leave. And then it was, I think we did parental leave, but really it's paternity leave, but now it's parental leave because it's meant to be more inclusive of any family situation.
Yeah.
And to encourage that both partners can share in that joy of starting a family and being there for your young ones. So it's something we do take very seriously, and it is protected right under legislation. And I think that it's important to ensure that we are good stewards of that opportunity. And again, it plays into the flexible working arrangements that we have for new parents. So if someone wants to come back on part-time, we have those kinds of arrangements, or starting a working day later so that they can arrange for childcare, or leaving early to do school run or pick up, that sort of thing. It's all part of our flexible working model. So.
Thank you, Jennifer. So real quick, we just have one more question in Calgary, and then we'll be done.
Hi, hello, I'm Anita. This is for a small sect of people among us, and this question is open to anybody in the panel, but I think Andre would be the right person to answer this because he's from the academia. So I'm a postdoctoral research associate at University of Calgary. I'm an astrophysicist, but I work with geomatic engineers. So my life is great. I am a scientist. I have inspired a lot of young ones to follow the same career path as me. But what they don't know is that it is very difficult to be financially stable for postdocs. We work really hard as much as industry partners. I do programming, I build up these algorithms to analyze large data, but I am so underpaid. And I want to bring this out to the table over here that why does research have very less funding? We know that we have people over here working for Government of Canada, industry, and we also have academic background people. So if you could consider why this is a problem, it would be very great, because I think this could contribute to the increase in the 30 by 30 initiative. And more women can aspire to become scientists without being worried about the financial problem. So what are your comments on that? And if you could take an initiative to bring us that stability, that would be really great. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much for that question, and also for mentoring and sponsoring, the younger generation that are following you right now. I think that's very admirable. So a couple of things. I'm really happy that you brought that point up, because I appreciate what the students and even some of the postdoctoral researchers are doing now by really pushing the government, especially the government of Canada, to identify that, what is it, over the last decade, salaries in scholarships or scholarships for students and PDF researchers have not increased. It's not indexed to inflation, so kind of, getting that conversation going from the students and from the the researcher trainees it's great, right? A couple of things that I would certainly say about that is I agree with you that it can be low sometimes, and I've seen it. Luckily, on average in engineering, it is a bit better when you look at the numbers, because engineering, the researchers tend to be tied to industry. Therefore, they can leverage funding through programs like MyTax and others, right? And the base stipend or salary for postdoctoral researchers tend to also be a bit higher in engineering. So definitely, on average, that's the case. But I do think that a number of the institutions, I can speak for University of Alberta and for University of Calgary, they are working to really start to collaborate more with industry and with government, civil society organizations, with community partners, and then leverage into government programs to increase those salaries and those stipends a bit more, right? But really starting this conversation and talking about it, I think it's good, because once we motivate government to be, to notice and to start, maybe in their budgets, put some funding to this. I think that's where, we're going to be moving in the right direction. So I'm happy to say that at least that has been initiated. Now we're just going to have to watch and see what happens over the next, year or two in terms of, really brand that out. So I agree with you completely that it will motivate more students and researchers to participate in building that pipeline. But you're right, the funding has to be commensurate with the amount of work that they're doing and the time that they're spending getting this training as well.
Carmen?
I just want to provide an industry perspective and thank you for your comments. I want to say I understand. I taught at the university for a little while now at the U of C, and when I did the math, I think I was making $3 an hour, and so that was probably, I wasn't very good. Maybe that was the reason why. But I spent too much time preparing and marking. Whatever. But what I do want to say is, build on what Andre says, is that our industry is built on technology and innovation. Full stop. And we have to collaborate with government and specifically universities to develop those technologies because we don't have that expertise in-house. So agreed that that's where the collaboration comes from. And I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. So we make effort to work with all of our partners to progress our industry. The other thing that I'll say too, we also work in communities, and this is not specific to women in engineering. I will say we work in communities up north where there's a lot of Indigenous groups, and we have a mandate and a policy that we fund the communities that we work within. And part of what that looks like is that we actually have scholarship programs, and we encourage the Indigenous folks to do trades or power engineering or even go into engineering or geosciences. And we fund those programs personally as an industry. And I think I can say the same for most industries to do that as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Do we have
Yes.
one, or do we have time for one more question here from Edmonton?
No.